all corners of the globe to your ears, it's the Midnight Movie Cowboys. Sometimes informative, sometimes controversial, but always unpredictable. It's the Midnight Movie Cowboys podcast with your hosts, Hunter, John, and Stu. And now, on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Midnight Movie Cowboys. I'm Hunter in Texas, and joining me in the Rocky Mountain High of Colorado is Mr. John Grace. Say hello, John.
Hola.
And joining us from his hideout in the Cecil Hotel, we got Mr. Eric Zaldivar in Los Angeles.
Howdy.
Howdy. And
right?
Howdy indeed. But before we get into our, Eric's here. He hasn't talked Westerns in a while with us, but we're going to be doing that. But first, we got to whip out our junk and show us the crap we've bought lately. Who wants to go first? John, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I got it right here. Just arrived from Amazon today. Flag of Iron.
Boy.
Latest, Shaw Brothers release, 88 films. Played on television in the States as Spearmen of Death. And actually a really good Venoms film, far better than the actual Five Venoms film.
The Five Venoms film, I don't think is very good.
It's not good. It's massively overrated.
It's one of those, I'd always heard martial arts fans talk it up. And then when I finally got the Dragon Dynasty one, I was going, it's kind of convoluted. Like I couldn't follow it very well. I just was like, I don't know.
It's more of a mystery suspense film than a kung fu film. And never really lives up to the promise it has in the first 5 minutes where it introduces the Venoms and shows their powers and everything. And, when you're a kid, you want them to put on the mask. And fight with the mask on like a superhero movie, which we didn't have back then, I might add. Didn't exist as a genre. And it's nothing like that at all. It's like this Judge D mystery without Judge D.
Yeah. All right. Is that it for you?
But I haven't looked at it yet. I haven't even broken the plastic on it. Just arrived today from Amazon, from their overpaid slave wage. The delivery driver just drops it right off, and looking forward to digging into it. But that's it.
They made such a big deal about increasing everybody's wage to $15. What are you talking about?
What was it? I saw this post on the internet, one of these like Uber Eats or Favor or whatever drivers.
Yeah.
Taking a picture of the request on their phone. Like, do you have any special requests? It said, please look into my Ring camera and say, thank you for keeping me employed.
Well, it's funny because I saw an Amazon spam me on Facebook with their employment thing, and the people arguing on the thread. It's fascinating. It's like they're paid $15 an hour. They have like full medical benefits and coverage. What more do you want? Isn't this what you guys were asking for years?
It's never enough.
No, it never is. And now they want $25 an hour.
I can't think of any delivery. I mean, I could be completely talking out of my ass. I've done a few. Yeah, but I can't think of any delivery job that I got a 401. Do they get a 401k? I'm not sure.
They got a pretty good benefits package.
They get medical, dental. So I mean,
UPS has amazing benefits.
Really?
I will say.
Yeah, they do.
UPS pays amazingly well. You can make a very comfortable living working for UPS as a driver. The only trade-off is you basically work 6-7 days a week.
Sure, yeah.
You don't have
they will overwork you.
It's very, very, it's very hard work. But the pay is good, the benefits are good. I knew this guy who worked there just like in the night sort, and for nothing, and he was just like, well, my wife makes money, I'm just here for the benefits for the family, that's it. Like
I know a number of people who have like college degrees, and then they did that one summer at UPS and liked it enough. They said, well, I'll just do this because this pays better than, what I got a degree in.
Yeah.
And has great benefits. And the retirement package apparently is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. Like you can retire at 50 and be comfy the rest of your life. All right, Eric, what about you?
Well, self-plug and whip out my junk. I recently interviewed a cinematographer called David Worth, who actually, John, I didn't even know this when I interviewed him. I should have done my research a little bit better than I did, because I was just interviewing him for kind of forgotten early 70s Westerns, a complete piece of garbage, but it's a fascinating piece of garbage. Mm-hmm. And he DP'd the second unit of Remo Williams, all of the Statue of Liberty stuff in Mexico.
What?
Oh, hell. Oh, wow.
Yeah. But the good news is that I'm hoping it's in this book. It's his book. I bought it recently after he recommended it to me. I've already found a few typos, but it's good from what I've seen. But yeah, interviewed him for something completely differently, and that'll be sometime in the future, a YouTube video. I think I got some good stuff out of it.
Oh, interesting.
And then the second thing that I got was this tome. I used to have one of these as a kid, and so it hit the nostalgia. It pulled on the nostalgia strings a little bit for me, and I had to get it. It's basically a Leonard Maltin every movie. Well, not really, but a lot of film, right. Little blurbs.
You trying to decide what to rent tonight at Blockbuster? Exactly.
They're very snippy too. I like some of these. They're very very condescending when they need to be, and sometimes when they don't have to be. It's kind of fun. I had it as a kid, and I was just like, oh man, I remember the cover and everything.
Yeah.
The raised. This is raised.
Oh yeah, it's got the texture. You can.
Yeah. It
kind of.
Yeah.
Stroke it.
So yeah, relic from the past. And I was just like, I want this. Hadn't seen one of these things in 20 years or something like that. Anyways, those are the two things I got.
Well, I got a few things. One, I got Flag of Iron.
Oh, there we are again.
Yep, it's got that reversible cover. Pretty sweet. 88.
Everybody got their farmer copy yet?
No, they sold out before I could order one at Diabolic. Hopefully they'll get more.
They are, yeah.
And usually those code reds come into Movie Trading Company by my house. They usually get those in. So
perfect.
Probably get it then. Also got Legendary Weapons of China.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I didn't like that one. It was too comedic for me, but maybe I need to rewatch it.
This is one I've actually never seen, but I was like, dang, that's a nice package. So
yeah, it's regarded as a classic. It's I've always found it kind of middling. It has a great action scene in the finale, and it's a great idea, but it does have a lot of comedy that could have been cut, and it would have made the film better. I would love to one day just go do what I would call an export cut and cut all the goofy stuff out and see how it played.
The facial expressions on the people on this cover are interesting. Like that.
Well, Lau Kar-leung is Liu Jialiang. He's the lead, and he's not a leading man.
No, the guy above the word legendary, that smile.
Oh, Fu Xing.
Disturbing.
Yeah, Fu Xing is playing a character who is impersonating Lau Kar-leung's character, but we're never given the reason why.
It's not because Fu Xing died in the middle of it and they just couldn't finish.
No, he died during the middle of 8 Diagram Pole Fight.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying because his plot just falls off in the middle of that.
Yeah, and I think they just put him in there to put him on the poster because he was so popular at the time. They thought it would help the box office, rather than saying, "Oh, the lead is Liu Jialiang." It's like, well, that's like the lead is John Carpenter.
All right, and so the last thing I got, Miller's Crossing, Criterion Blu-ray.
Very
nice.
Look into your heart. What heart? Is this the hi-hat?
It's the glass key. It's Hammond's the glass key.
What is people's issues with Criterion recently? I can't follow any of those specs and things. Is it the green tint or something? I can't.
They've allowed some directors to go in and mess with the color timing on their work.
All right, that is annoying. Yeah.
And I think Juno Bong did it for Memories of Murder, which is a much better film than Parasite. And he also did it. I think Wong Kar-wai did it for the box set they put out. He changed the titles and the colors, which I'm like, why? Those movies look great because of Christopher Doyle's cinematography, Doesn't make any sense.
And speaking of cinematography, I forgot to mention, he ended up DPing 2 Eastwood movies.
Uh-oh.
No way.
But did not direct a Dirty Harry.
Did not direct a Dirty Harry. DP'd Bronco Billy and the second Chimpanzee movie.
Okay.
Any Which Way But Loose. I had 2 movies that I hadn't seen because we're all Eastwood fans here, for better or for worse. But there's some stuff that I just will not follow him in, and those were 2 of them. But I just for the interview, I saw Bronco Billy. It was good. It was fine.
Yeah. Those
Bronco
two are
Billy, isn't that one
better
of Clint's?
photographed, I think. Yeah.
It was
Those
photographed
two
really
are better
well.
photographed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's photographed really well. Yeah, no, Bronco Billy's it's good. I don't like certain aspects of it. I like other aspects of it. I like these misfits and the family that he had. Clint allows himself to do stuff that is un-Clint like, whilst also doing a bunch of Clint stuff that you expect him to do. So it was an interesting departure for him.
Speaking of Clint is in spaghetti westerns.
That's true.
The documentary we're talking about today, which is on Netflix, it's called Django and Django.
Mm.
It's a documentary. Eric, you brought this to my attention.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get there. It's a documentary about Sergio Corbucci, and it's just interviews with Quentin Tarantino, Ruggero Deodato, and your buddy Franco Nero.
Yes.
And how'd you find this thing?
It has no press, does it?
No, I didn't even know this existed, but it's got a ton of Tarantino interview in it.
It sure does. Yeah. The poster clearly must have been made by an Italian. It's so cheap and shitty looking. It's Photoshop. Tarantino he can't look any more bored than he looks in it. Have you seen it? It's just like he's in the background of the cloud.
Yeah.
Not the most exciting of posters. It's how best to describe it would be it's a glorified supplemental featurette on a DVD, basically, that somehow squeaked into Netflix.
It feels like a Arrow special feature.
That's an hour and like 15 minutes long.
Like Arrow special features will have those interviews with like old Italian men on a couch somewhere in Rome.
Yes.
Talking about working with X and with this.
And that's here too.
Person.
And that's here too.
And that's what this feels like to me.
That's exactly
it feels like an Arrow Blu-ray special feature.
Yeah. Well, to me, I don't have too many Arrow Blu-rays, and the ones that I do have, I haven't even cracked open.
They put out a lot of spaghetti westerns.
I know. I have most of them. I'm missing Grand Duel, and I'm missing the Ringo box set. And I'm also missing the latest one, the box set, which I want to get. And the Blu-ray version is already on YouTube of Massacre Time, believe it or not.
Oh, nice.
But I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it anyway. I haven't cracked them open, so I haven't watched the special feature. But to me, this is like Blue Underground 20 years ago or something like that, or Anchor Bay. It's the same thing, like you said, the way you described it.
Yeah.
But there's no press at all. It just kind of snuck its way into Netflix. The only reason I even knew about it was because all the spaghetti nerds on Facebook have been posting about it. So otherwise I wouldn't have known without their input.
Well, you get a lot of Tarantino in this movie, which, will either sell people or deter people. But one thing I noticed, two things I noticed about Quentin. One, I'm reminded that, it must be pretty cool to get pitched a movie by him, because the film opens with him describing stuff he didn't do in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and talking about it like it's a real story, with Rick Dalton meeting with Sergio Corbucci and the problems they have with each other. And the way he tells the story is pretty good. That's the best thing in the movie. But then, we get Quentin talking history.
Oof. Yeah. He's a good raconteur when it's fantasy. He's
yes. Good. And Quentin knows movies, but he's your classic person who knows everything about one subject, and then he falls apart on everything else. Whenever Quentin talks about history, it's like, okay, his entire understanding of history comes from movies. Yeah.
Or politics, which
blends
he
together.
Also brings up. Yeah, it blends together.
But anyway, so you really wanted to do this documentary. So take me through, like, what are some of your thoughts and issues or whatever.
I was telling John before we started recording that, and I know this is not for good podcasting, but I had a lot to say about it last week when I saw it, and a bunch of shit happened, and now I don't quite remember all of my points. I know I had more salient points than I have, but I'm going by a week old a memory of a forgettable, DVD supplement, basically. But let's not leave the raconteur stuff first, the fantasy stuff. Let's not leave the one thing I want to say about the Rick Dalton meeting Corbucci thing. Why didn't we get that for the novel instead of the novel that we got?
I don't know. The stuff with the novel is it's all like if you haven't read the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood novel, it's all like filling in either in between scenes or characters' thoughts during scenes. And the problem with that novel is I don't believe for a second that Cliff Booth enjoys I Am Curious Yellow.
No.
Like that whole sequence where Cliff is thinking about he's taking this girl to go see I Am Curious Yellow. Nobody, I don't believe people when they say they like that movie or think it's interesting.
It read that whole chapter, because I think it's an entire chapter devoted to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been some time since I've read the book too. We probably should have done a video on the book, actually.
We should have. Yeah, we talked about it and it just never came to pass.
I still haven't read it.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll let it be this. I don't know, even though John hasn't read it. But I think there's an entire chapter early on in the book too. It's an entire chapter devoted to the film. And then I agree with you. I don't think a World War II veteran is going to give two shits about that movie. I don't think a World War II veteran is going to give two shits about a lot of art movies. Although John has a grandfather who was in WW2 who liked Bergman. Is that right?
No, I had an uncle who was, I guess he was post Greatest Generation, but not exactly a boomer. And he really liked Bergman. And I think he saw him at an art theater in Hawaii.
So he wasn't
60s.
In the war? He wasn't in the war?
No. He did serve in the military. And then he went on to like a government service job or civil service job.
I'll say, though, Bergman is less of a leap for me than
it's true.
Sjöström.
Yeah.
You know.
But he so the whole chapter is devoted. There's a lot more problems in that book than just that. I don't think he understands the relationship between Cliff and Rick in the way that he understood it while he was directing, or maybe he never understood it and it was all a happy accident. I don't know. But in the book, it's heavily implied that Cliff just kind of puts up with Rick and doesn't even really like him that much. Also,
that doesn't come through in the film at all.
It does not. No. What comes through the film is that he loves his buddy and will do, and he realizes his shortcomings, but he'll do anything to help him out.
Devoted to him
completely. And if that was
one of the best romances in movies,
if that was the intention in the movie, fell flat completely. The exact opposite is what happens.
And one thing also I remember is it really undermines Cliff's kind of good guy demeanor.
Yes, it does.
Like, because he gets his dog through dog fighting and stuff. And I remember you told me Cliff's Michael Vick tendencies.
Yeah. He's Michael Vick up until he's not.
Yeah. He just all of a sudden loses the stomach for it.
And also he murders the guy. Yeah, he loses the stomach for it. Enough for him to murder the guy that he was partnered with for a few years or months, getting this dog into fights. He's kill crazy too. When he's not obviously in war, but when he's back as a civilian, he murders 3 people?
Yeah. In the movie, it's like Cliff may have killed his wife.
Yeah, in the book, it's rock solid.
In the book, he's Michael Myers.
In the book, he's Michael Myers. He murders. It goes back to his. I think it's before the service, or I guess maybe when he came back. I don't remember the timeline, but he's back. He didn't come back right away from Europe. He stayed in Paris, considered being a pimp for a little while, then decided that he couldn't do that. Came back to the States. I think this is the timeline. Came back to the States. He's having pizza, which I don't think people did in the 40s, by the way, unless you were Italian. Right. Having pizza at a pizzeria with his girlfriend or some girl he's going to bang. We'll get to that in a second. And this mobster comes in because I think she's hooking for the mob. I don't remember the deets, but he murders 2 mobsters in front of a bunch of people at a pizzeria. And I think he instigates it in order so that he could kill them. So that was the weird part. He's very kill crazy. He's turned into a guy who turned down underage jailbait in the film. Yeah. Is now a sex maniac who likes to fuck in theaters, in cars. Like, this is not the same guy who I don't think this guy would turn down underage pussy. I don't think so.
I think part of it is I kind of wonder if Tarantino was intentionally trying to do like the movie novelization where you amp up the sleaze,
like the sleaze. I think that was the idea. I kind
of wonder if he was doing that on purpose.
But it comes at the expense of the movie. And we're not living in 1970 whatever anymore.
No,
they don't do these things anymore. I mean, whatever. I get it. That's his whole shtick. Whatever.
But here's the thing about Quentin is he's a highly contradictory figure. Like you said, you think that maybe he doesn't understand his characters or what's great about this, that, or the other thing. If you watched this movie and didn't know anything about Quentin, you never heard of him, you've never seen his movies, you would think he was like the most woke filmmaker on the planet. Maybe not the most, but you think
because the fascism
and also his theory on Django's.
I didn't even understand that theory. It might be because I blanked out after he said that it's not his wife. Maybe it's not his wife, but it's in the song. It's his love,
Yeah.
So I immediately just kind of zoned out. But at the end, when he got to the bit where maybe she was black, I was just like, wait, what? I didn't understand this whole timeline.
So, I mean, Django is a movie, and it's a comic book movie that has no basis in reality. But his theory. So Quentin, the movie ends with Quentin giving this just bowel movement of a theory on Django. I mean, it is embarrassing, and he says that at the beginning we never find out who Mercedes is, the woman that Django is he's at her grave, and he theorizes that Django is from the South, but he went to go fight for the North, and this is he left this woman behind, and he came back, and the town is taken over by racist KKK members who genocided all the black people, and now they're working on the Mexicans. So
no indication
and then he's like, oh, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's the wife of a black soldier from that town that he was friends with, and they went to fight for the North, and he came back. He died, and he came back, and she's dead. And I was like this.
So it's a southern town.
It's a southern town.
And a black soldier, a free black man, leaves the southern town and goes to fight for the North with the intent of coming back.
First off, okay, I know there are exceptions, and there were people who were very ideologically driven. Most people sided with whatever state they were in.
Yes.
Ipso facto. You read General Custer's. I can't remember what his rank was. I shouldn't even be throwing it out. But you read Custer's diaries on the lead up to the war when he was at West Point, and he goes, a lot of us disagreed on the ideological stuff. He goes, I was from Ohio, but I agreed with the South. I thought they had the right to self-determination and they could break off and do what they want. But at the end of the day, all of us who disagreed, we ended up and went and fought for our state.
People were so rooted in their community at the time that whenever you see these Civil War reenactments, you see that you see all these wacky flags that the Southerners usually actually have. And that's to represent their community.
Yep.
Each of those individual flags. But his theory is complete bupkis. It doesn't make any sense. And also on top of that,
free black guy. I mean, it's movie Civil War.
It's movie logic, but you know what he's also trying to do? He's trying to insinuate himself into the history of the movie. Because if Django's whatever is black, then he can tie it into Django Unchained. Like he loves doing that.
He goes into this whole thing about, okay, when I started the movie, Eric, I kind of immediately noticed after the bit with Rick Dalton meeting Corbucci and all that stuff, which if you're a fan of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, this is that beginning sequence is
It's not in the book. It's not in the book. I think the book, honestly, at this point should have been an integral or whatever they call sequels that are within the periods that we didn't see in the movie. It should have just been him and Cliff in Almeria shooting movies. It really should have.
But Tarantino spends a lot of time in this film talking about the political stuff, talking about how every single movie Corbucci made is about fascism. And I know you and I have talked about how the political aspect of spaghetti westerns has been largely overblown, usually by political actors like Alex Cox, people like that. Now, but they do have footage of Corbucci going, "Oh, my film is for the revolutionaries, for the workers." So I don't know. Talk about that a little bit.
If there's a director, which by the way, before we get into this, one other thing that Quentin in his theory forgot to mention was that the KKK members, as he called them, are also working for the Mexican Federales.
And Deodato in the film said they have hoods on because the extras didn't look good.
They were ugly, yeah.
Yeah, he said they were horrible extras, and he said, "Why don't we put red hoods on them?"
Yeah. All right, so back to okay. So in terms of politics, it is overblown for the most part. There's two standing figures in my mind that I can think. Well, excuse me, there's three. But he's so minor that we'll discuss him anyway. There's three directors out of what, 60 million, whatever the number is, that were very politically minded. Corbucci was one of them.
Okay. They have footage of him talking about that.
Oh yeah, yeah. But to say that every one of his movies, and when he says that, I'm sure he's talking about westerns, because I don't think
I think he said westerns.
To say that all of them are is an overstatement. I don't think the white, the yellow, and the black, outside of that racially motivated title, I don't think it has anything to do with World War II at all. It's just a stupid comedy where Tomas Milian plays a Japanese man. So that's an overstatement. But he was politically active, or again, I've said this before, I think his understanding of politics was as simple as fascist overran my town at this point 20 something years prior, and I witnessed this as a child or a teenager. I don't like that. I'm going to be a card-carrying communist, which is the other side of the spectrum.
And it was like in Europe, you had to be either radically left or radically right.
Yeah, there was no in between.
Yeah.
And so I think it was that sort of understanding of politics. So it's not like Corbucci really understood any kind of, I mean, I'm saying this, he's dead, I don't know, but like it doesn't seem like to me that there was any nuance there. Well, it was either I know I'm not this, so I'm going to be this. That's all.
Well, and it kind of feels like the genre filmmakers like Corbucci were pretty simplistic politically. Yes. Whereas, if you were going to look at someone like a Pasolini was a ideologue, like that guy was a communist. He'd read the communist literature. He understood the ideology. Like Pasolini was like, that guy was a commie, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. When you talk about the Zapata Westerns, the Mexican Revolution Westerns that Corbucci did, I think there's more to say in the third one that they briefly touched upon, which we'll get into.
The revolutionary.
What am I doing in the middle of the revolution? What am I doing in the middle of a revolution? There's more to it than the Franco Nero ones, and we could talk about that if you want. But the two Franco ones, Mercenary and Compañeros, there's nothing really new ideologically there. Hollywood was making these kind of leftist westerns even before the 60s. Look at with Gary Cooper and Burt Lancaster, and that's probably why it was pretty leftist. Not Paso Verde. Help me out, John.
Damn it.
Veracruz.
Yes, yeah, Veracruz.
Check out
Aldrich
Veracruz.
movie.
In fact, it's an Aldrich movie. It's a great film. I recommend it highly, and I'm not alone in saying that it's a classic. Watch that movie. Watch Veracruz, and you will see the formula of those two Franco Nero films. You will see the formula of a lot of Zapata westerns, Italian or otherwise. It's the two Americans taking advantage of a situation in Mexico, and one of them, they're both cynical, but one eventually becomes entranced in the cause of the peons and the revolutionaries, and the other one remains cynical and therefore perishes at the end of the movie. It's all there in Veracruz. And I dare I say, I think I would say easily actually that Veracruz is better than, it's probably the best example of that subgenre, I would say.
It's a great movie. I would agree.
It's really good. In fact, you could see the influence on spaghetti westerns clearly.
Yeah, it's all there. When I saw it, my jaw kind of dropped when I saw the way Lancaster portrayed his character and everything. I was like, this is what all the Italians were watching.
Yeah, Leone included.
Mm-hmm. With all these Italian spaghetti westerns, you know, people kind of forget the movies they come from.
Right.
They've kind of eclipsed.
They come from movies like that. There's a little bit of it in 40 Guns. And they also come, some of the wackier films come from B Westerns from Hollywood.
Yeah.
I've learned to realize that as I've watched more and more of those in the past few years. I've learned, oh my God, this is from that. This is like, they must have been running those before the war. And maybe after a little bit. I got off track. I'm sorry. So yes, you're right. Your reading of Corbucci's politics, I think, is on point. They are simplistic Westerns. It's essentially what it is. It's the government or the Mexican government bad, the revolutionaries good, and not really much else to say other than that. And the cynical mercenary at the end of The Mercenary, and indeed at the end of Compañeros, played by Franco Nero, after the entire movie of just kind of making money and profit off of the misery of these people, he has a change of heart at the end of the film, much like in Veracruz. As far as the politics and the non-Zapata Westerns, if they're there, I can't really tell. I guess The Specialist has those hippie characters. Has anybody here seen The Specialist?
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it. I have it on Blu-ray though.
I recommend it. I think it has Corbucci's. Quentin actually says this for Sonny and Jed. I disagree, but I agree. I agree with him to an extent. There's stuff that I do agree with Quentin on here, and we'll talk about that in a second.
What did you think of? Oh, go ahead. You know what? Go ahead.
That's all right. That's all right. Write that down so you can ask.
Yeah.
Specialist has Corbucci's best action sequences. He really mastered the cutting. Like Chris Casey, who's a longtime fan of these movies, much longer than me, has a great way of putting it, and I'm going to butcher it. And he's absolutely right, actually. He says the pre-climax of The Specialist, where they showed a little clip of it a little bit in the film, in the doc, where Halliday busts out of a wall and starts firing it's actually two rifles, but you can barely tell unless you pause the film. He has two rifles connected somehow. They don't explain that. He's firing rifles at these Mexicans, and Chris Casey describes it as it's a movie where the right people shoot the wrong people and the wrong people shoot the right people, and it's completely chaotic. And it really is. And it almost feels like a real gunfight, or what I would imagine one would be like, where it's just like there's just like just a blur of action that's going on, and you just let the chips fall on the floor and lay them. I don't know what the analogy would be, but it's just completely chaotic. And some people, there's innocent bystanders that are ducking out of the way. Some get shot, so on and so forth. It's a really good sequence. And the movie is probably one action sequence away from being an outright classic, because there's not too much of it. It's peppered in a little bit throughout the film, but that is a great sequence. The editing, the cutting, it is fantastic. I would greatly recommend watching The Specialist. And also, it's a very strange film where there's actually like these hippie street urchin. One is wearing a Sergeant Pepper's type military garb, and Johnny Halliday has chainmail, which somehow propels bullets.
But Eric, these are supposedly so realistic.
All that stuff happened. All that stuff happened, John. Come on, all that stuff happened.
They didn't have the guitars and the yellow hats. And
this is what
they didn't have electric guitars and chainmail and hippies. What are you talking about,
dude? This is what Joe Carducci refers to as the Circus Maximus of Italian Westerns, where he's like, they couldn't get out of the Circus Maximus for long enough to be seen. Like Clint was the only thing that was holding Leone back from being completely absurd.
we should do it. It is the truth. We should do an entire show on that book on Stone Mail.
Oh, we really should.
Especially he gave us a plug on the new Vulgate. On the blog. Yeah.
Nice.
Did we ever? Well, we won't discuss that on camera. But it's nothing bad. It's just I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I'm not to say. But where am I? The Specialist.
So we were talking about the Specialist.
I recommend The Specialist. That's what I wanted to say. Quentin said that his best action sequence, or one of the best, I think. I don't want to get him wrong. Was in Sonny and Jed. There's a scene where both Sonny and Jed are in a barn. They're sleeping in this ranch that they came across, and they're outlaws, and they're running away from this sheriff who Quentin calls, not that this matters, this is stupid nerdy me, but he says, I think he calls him something else other than Franciscus, but Telly Savalas plays a guy named Franciscus, not whatever the hell he said. I want to talk about his theory about Sonny and Jed, by the way, because I think it's an interesting theory. I think he's wrong, but I think it's an interesting theory. But he describes a sequence where they're underneath this corn, and that is a good sequence, and it's well edited. By that point, Corbucci was at the top of his game in terms of editing action sequences. I just think the highest, the crescendo of that would be in 1969's The Specialist. Well, anyways, The Specialist. Yeah.
What did you think of his take on Navajo Joe and the physicality of Burt Reynolds?
I think Burt's great. I think there is a yeah, for sure. I think he moves really well. You could see him leaping and jumping off of horses. The camera moves with him occasionally too. There's some fantastic sequences in Navajo Joe.
Yeah, because I remember when I first saw Navajo Joe, I'd seen quite a few spaghetti westerns by that point. Yeah. And when I saw Navajo Joe, I remember thinking it was unusual for how much jumping and physical action Burt was doing, and going, man, I'm not used to this in this kind of movie. Just how much stuff Burt's doing, like jumping on top of people, taking down people off of horses and stuff. I just remember that kind of struck me at the time, but I don't think I was mature enough to articulate it when I'd seen it. But watching it here, I was going, yeah, Burt's really going for it.
He gets in there. It's not like, usually a lot of these guys just kill people from far away with their guns. I mean, Navajo Joe just is
like up in people's face.
A much more close contact kind of killer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Even when there's sequences where he's shooting people with a rifle like 8 times. I'm not kidding. Point blank. Even when he does fire a gun, it seems to be up close. Yeah, that's another fantastic climax, is the end of Navajo Joe with Aldous Umbrell.
Yeah, and I know Quentin used the music from it for Kill Bill, the main.
And he used it well. I think he used it very well.
Mm-hmm. It was used in Election.
That's right, it was.
Yeah.
I had dinner with Alexander Payne, and I asked him, how did he feel about because this was after Kill Bill. How did he feel about Quentin? This was all circumstantial too. It was I didn't know him or anything like that. I was just happened to be there. And I was like, what did you think about the Navajo Joe music used in and he gave me a look like he was not too pleased by that fact. He felt like his thunder was stolen or something. I don't know. It was kind of a
He acknowledged it in the commentary of the DVD.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wonder if he changed his feelings about giving away his hobbies.
Do you know what he said?
He said something that music is from it's Ennio Morricone, Navajo Joe, Sergio. He said like a spaghetti western from the '60s, and he goes, and that's all I remember him saying. But he did acknowledge where it was from.
Oh, okay. No, I mean he this was 07, early 07. We went to the one and only time I think that Ennio Morricone played in concert in America. What ended up being, because he announced a bunch in LA and it never happened.
Right.
Well, anyways, whatever. But yeah, Navajo Joe is a very physical character, unlike I guess an Eastwood or a Van Cleef. Even in those silly Sabata movies where there's trampolines and things, you don't see Sabata doing any of that stuff. So
Well, he kind of has to be because he's essentially a one-man army taking out a gang, and he can't do it all from long range. He has to get up close and take them out one by one, like a Jason in a Friday the 13th movie or whatever. So that was probably one of the first times that sort of commando one man taking out every, a whole group was probably done in movies, like actually murdering them.
And Quentin says,
it helps when you have Burt, who's a former stuntman.
Yeah.
Like he can do all that stuff.
Yeah. You see him in, I think, what's that CIA operative movie that he did?
Operation CIA, right?
Operation CIA, and there's a lot of there's a bit where he repeats in Seamus years later, where he slides across the floor and stuff like that. There's some interesting stunt work, and
he did a shoulder roll. That was his big thing. He would do that shoulder roll or whatever, and that tumble.
And at the time, he looks great doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like really fluid. But yeah, give me another one, Hunter. I forget what we were talking about.
I was talking about Quentin's take on Burt. What did you think of Franco's interviews?
It's stuff I've heard a million times, and I think anybody, not even personally, because we don't normally. I mean, we talk movies, but we just talk about life in general. Usually, his life, it's stuff I've heard before, and it's stuff that you would know too, back and front, because he said these things before. Just like that story on other discs and things. Just like that story, I think it was with Deodato. Yeah, it is a Deodato, where the idea of Django dragging a coffin isn't even an original idea from Corbucci. It's just something they stole from a comic book off the stand.
They bring that up in the film.
Yeah, I wish to God, and I've tried looking for that. What the origin of that comic was, but imagine trying to look for that.
And it reinforces my belief that we talk about, people will go, "Ooh, spaghetti westerns, so realistic." Really, they're comic book westerns. They like Quentin talks about that surreal quality they have that comes from comics.
From the very beginning too, because Django's 66. We're talking 1964. We're talking A Fistful of Dollars. If we all can agree that was the first, and it was. Anything that came before, if it resembled Leone, it was basically coincidence. In terms of Italian, like Minnesota Clay. Minnesota Clay, which was talked about in this movie. Minnesota Clay has a sequence at the end of the movie where Cameron Mitchell gets blinded and has to have a shootout with like 5 guys, and he's blind. That's straight out of a comic book.
Mm-hmm. Zatoichi.
It's straight out of Zatoichi, and that's right. This is post Zatoichi, because that's also 64. And Zatoichi was, I think, the early 62, right?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. Fistful of Dollars. That's all. I mean, it's Yojimbo, but it's in itself a heightened reality. It's not realistic. We could talk about Minnesota Clay. Apparently he likes Minnesota Clay, and I'm glad that he does, because I actually quite like Minnesota Clay myself.
Yeah, Quentin was saying it's one of his favorite films he did.
He might be right. In terms, he might be on the same level as me on that. I think it is probably one of my favorite Corbucci's, just mostly because of that sequence at the end, but I like Cameron Mitchell in it. It has some really good stuff in it, where the femme fatale, which that's another thing, Corbucci, we should be talking more about Corbucci actually, because the doc is supposedly about him. But Corbucci's females, unlike, and he talks about this a little bit, unlike females and characters in most of these movies, not all, Corbucci really focused on females in a way that others didn't. And sometimes he didn't. Sometimes they're just kind of, even when they're just these damsel in distress type chicks, there's still something to them. They're there throughout the running time, or most of the running time. You have these complex characters like the widow and the specialist who's kind of pulling the strings of all the bad people in town. You have, who's another interesting Corbucci female? I think Columba. Columba, played by what's her face, who voiced Claudia Cardinelli in Once Upon a Time in the West. I'm blanking on her name, but we'll move on. The female character in The Mercenary is also complex. In the case of, there's a femme fatale character in Minnesota Clay, where she is protecting Minnesota Clay after kind of fucking him over through most of the movie, but he wins her over, and at the end she's protecting him, his location, from the bad guys. And there's a brilliant sequence in a saloon where the bad guys capture her and they make her swear on the Bible with a gun to her head where he is, and don't lie to us. And she gives away the location and swears that she's not gonna lie, and they shoot her anyway. It's just like it's really fantastic, and it's done in a tasteful way technically, because later Corbucci would just show the gore, but he moves the camera away and it's so much more effective. I recommend Minnesota Clay quite a lot for the early Corbucci stuff. The first Western that he did, Massacre at Grand Canyon, I do not recommend. I don't know why Quentin says it's good, but whatever. Don't recommend that. That's with Jim Mitchum. Another early Corbucci I recommend, which is right after Minnesota Clay, is Johnny Oro with Mark Damon. It's a fun film. But anyways, go ahead.
I was going to ask you and John. So a Corbucci Western that gets a lot of attention.
Yeah.
You know what I
know exactly what you're talking about.
The Great Silence.
Yeah.
Okay. The Great Silence is, if you ask normie spaghetti Western fans, it's the best spaghetti Western ever made. It's the greatest film of all time. It's the greatest Western ever made. You know why? Because the bad guy wins.
Yeah, it's not even the greatest snow Western ever made.
No, that's Fargo. Just kidding. So just, I want your thought. We've talked about that on the show, but I'm pretty sure, but let's talk about, I want to know your thoughts and John's thoughts on Great Silence.
Well, once again, Franco says the same story that I think he said on other discs. If not, he said that to me privately. They're like, oh yes, Corbucci wanted me, but I went to go do Camelot. He also would tell you
which was the correct decision, by the way.
Which was probably the correct decision. I'm not sure. In fact, I'm almost, if it's the same film and the only replacement is Franco over Trintignant, it would be the same movie, and I don't think Franco would have added anything to it.
No. But Camelot, you got Vanessa Redgrave.
So you got Vanessa Redgrave. And I remember one time, and there's no way that this is possible. The times just don't match on that. I asked him about the specialist. It's like, hey, what happened? How come now? That was at the time when I had just sort of met him, and I didn't know all the information that I know now, because I know that he had a falling out with Corbucci while making. Oh wait, no, now I'm wrong. Sorry. He made Compañeros at the tail end of '69. It was released in '70, if I'm correct. That's when he had a falling out with Corbucci, because he felt that Tomas was being allowed to upstage him, and Corbucci was facilitating the upstaging. And so when it came time to make the original third, I think, somebody will have to correct me on that. That ended up being a comedy, and I think it was meant to be a comedy through and through. It's basically a more comedic Compañeros. It's the same thing, same film, just more comedic. It's with Eli Wallach and Franco Nero and Vanessa Redgrave's wife. Vanessa Redgrave's sister, whose first name I'm blanking on right now.
Lynn Redgrave, right?
Yes.
Lynn Redgrave, yeah.
Yes.
It's called A Toast to My Death, A Toast to Your Death, or it's also called Don't Turn the Other Cheek. And I believe there's a third title. But that was initially meant to be helmed by Corbucci. Franco threw the kibosh on that idea, and in came Duccio Tessari, who's a great director. We talked about him fairly recently in the Ringo, in the Christmas movie, the Christmas special. So in 69, Franco and Corbucci, so I was wrong earlier. In 69, when The Specialist was released, Franco and Corbucci were still in good terms. However, I did ask Franco about Specialist and like, hey, how come you weren't in The Specialist? How come you weren't the Johnny Halliday part? And now I know for a number of reasons, because it was a co-production with France. So they had to have a bunch of French people in it. But I asked Franco, how come you weren't in it? Oh, well, I was going to be in it, but I went to California to make a Camelot. And I'm like, no, that doesn't add up. That was 2 years prior. You know. Doesn't add up. Sorry. But anyways, The Great Silence. He tells his story. I don't think the movie would have been improved. I liked The Great Silence. When I first saw The Great Silence, I had just come off watching Django. And Django to me, even then I thought was a saggy middle portion of the movie, Django to me was something of a revelation. There was something so cool about it.
Yeah.
And the idea that, you know, at the end where his hands are broken, I thought he was going to die. Had I seen The Great Silence first, I would have definitely thought he was going to die. But in such a neat, he uses his ingenuity to get out of that situation, this self-reliance that not a lot of spaghetti Western characters have. I think characters like Blind Man with Tony Anthony could have used a little bit more of it, particularly because he's blind. But he seems to kind of get carried through the film by other people. I don't like that. I like my heroes to kind of be, you know, self-reliant. Had I seen Great Silence first, I would have thought he died. I saw Great Silence immediately after Django, and I liked it, but I thought it wasn't in the same realm as that first movie. Like, I thought Django was way cooler.
Yeah. I like a lot of the choices in Great Silence. I think Klaus Kinski is tremendous in it.
Yeah.
You know, it's got the comic book, like Trignant's style. It's very comic book.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of people sell you on the bad guys win. I mean, and
Yeah,
like Corbucci's in this documentary going, this film is for the revolutionaries. Is this edifying? You know, does this make you want, you know, am I supposed to go burn stuff down because I'm pissed that the good guy gets killed, you know?
Yeah, no, it might be. And there's an interview later in the doc, which is from I think it's an American documentary that's narrated by Frank Wolf, which is it's like 30 minutes long. I don't know exactly what it's called, but you could find it on some Anchor Bay disc from 20 years ago. You can find the full thing. And that's where a lot of the footage comes from. All those posters and things that you see on Rome, a lot of that comes from, I've never seen it cleaned up like that. Some of the other footage is fantastic from behind the scenes of The Specialist. I've never seen shit like that. I was very pleased with that. In fact, if there's a hard copy of this, I'd like to buy it for archival purposes. You know, there's another interview by Corbucci where he's in that doc, and he seems apathetic, and that's my understanding of Corbucci. He was apathetic towards Westerns, or towards the Westerns he was making, at least. Because he says that thing where he just he says, oh, you know, Westerns, they're ridiculous. You know, they don't even speak real. They just say 1 or 2 or 3, and then I fill it in later. You know, you know, I hate Westerns. And then the reporter says, oh, what will you be doing next? And comically he says, oh, Western next. Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to guess, to decipher what's real and what isn't when it comes to the political nature of Corbucci, you know, and you know, people are their personalities are multifaceted, and that might just be the case here. He might have been flippant about them, but also in some moments he might have felt that he was injecting some politics into it.
Well, and kind of like what I was saying earlier about Quentin, I don't think I finished this thought, but that he would guess, if you didn't know anything about him, that he's probably extremely woke, you know. And I'm sure
I don't think he is, to be honest.
That's the thing. You do like, okay, if you watch a movie like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that is not a woke film.
No.
You know, that is okay. I just watched Last Night in Soho recently. And that's another movie that does 60s nostalgia, but in Britain, in London, right?
Sure.
Right.
But there's nothing in Last Night in Soho that is going to offend anyone in 2021 or 2022. There's nothing that the narratives it promotes are totally tasteful to today's tastes.
Mhm.
They're totally appropriate for today's tastes. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood pissed people off. Bruce Lee fans were livid. It also really like stuck the thumb in the eye of like all the Manson worship and weird hippie cult worship. You know, there were narratives Quentin was challenging in that film. I mean, to go after Bruce Lee, you gotta, I mean, John, you know, how much have we talked about like the absurd cult of Bruce and how silly it is? But when you go after it, I mean, it's like, you know, they were trying to cancel Quentin over it.
If you bring up the movie and the novelization in any group, I'm talking any Facebook group, the men's paperback Facebook group, just any group like that, you will get a slew of people who worship Bruce Lee like children and are like, I can't believe he did that about Bruce Lee. Bruce's daughter complained. Like, that means anything. You know?
Yeah. And, you know, she was trying to, you know, get Quentin canceled, you know, calling him a white,
and the
straight
thing
white
is,
male and all that.
I know more about Bruce Lee than any of these knuckleheads. And it didn't offend me. I didn't care. It's fiction. And I doubt anybody who actually knew Bruce Lee really gave a damn. and if you look at that Pierre Burton interview that Bruce Lee did for Canadian television, and you watch the way he's portrayed there, obviously Mike Moe was doing an impression of that interview because he comes off extremely arrogant in that interview. He's just like, you know, it's just like doing the facial expressions and stuff. I mean, it's all there. It's like, yeah, man, you know, and it's like, who cares? And then, of course, the report, the Bob Baker letters showed up and pretty much knocked the wind out of everybody's sails. And I'm like, well, I knew this stuff all the time. Yeah. It's just now it's confirmed. It's like, yeah, Bruce is into coke. So it isn't impossible to think that if this situation really happened, Bruce wasn't snorting some coke and got into a fight with this Cliff Booth character that Quentin invented. It wouldn't seem so, you know, off the cuff anyway. But it's just the whole thing is ridiculous how people got upset about that thing.
Yeah.
I hope these people don't actually read the novel because in the novel it's kind of worse. Again.
Because of like a racial slur.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, definitely several times. But the thing that stuck in my mind was, again, this tendency to completely rearrange the DNA of Cliff Booth from the movie to the book, and where he's kill crazy. And there's a passage, I'm paraphrasing, you can find it yourself. There's a passage in the book where after the fight, Cliff is so pissed, like months after the fact, that he says, I hope I see that piece of shit, that nip on the street, and I'll fucking kill him. Fucking murder him. It's so weird. Not the Brad Pitt character from the film, but yeah, something else we're not talking about, and I don't know if this was his intention or not, it's in the movie heavily, but the movie basically is a lead up climax to two members of the Greatest Generation murdering a bunch of boomers.
Yeah.
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 That's what I liked about it.
And,
yes.
But it's just, yes. You know, but it's like that disconnect with Quentin, you know, when you hear him talk versus his art, it's like, it doesn't add up. It doesn't line up. There's something.
Did he write the novelization after the movie was released and add in the stuff about Bruce Lee just to get back at Shannon Lee or whatever?
According to him, he did write it after the fact.
Yeah. So a lot of it was a reaction to the movie.
And like, he's one of those guys who doesn't back down. He's just like, F you. Like, Don Murphy said something about me. I'm going to go punch him in the face in this restaurant, you know?
Yeah. What happened?
Oh, nothing. I was just thinking about when Quentin assaulted Don Murphy and.
Oh yeah, the restaurant fight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sure that was a real dinger. Oh yeah. Okay. Murphy's producing partner Jane Hampshire wrote this book about the making of Natural Born Killers, and there were some not very flattering descriptions of Tarantino in the book, and so Tarantino runs into Don Murphy at a restaurant in Hollywood and said, "Hey man, why'd you put that crap in the book or something?" And they got into a fight, and Tarantino like slapped Don Murphy around or something like that. And then apparently it was, I don't think any charges were filed or whatever, but then Tarantino showed up on Keenen Ivory Wayans had a talk show to replace Arsenio Hall in syndicated markets. And
hold on,
Tarantino,
before you go any further, did Tarantino put on his black scent for that show?
yes, he did. He wore a kung fu uniform top. He wore a Kango hat, and he was saying, "This is my Iron Monkey get up." And Keenen Ivory Wayans asked him about the Don Murphy fight. He said, "You got an incident?" He goes, "Yeah, man. Well, I went up to him. I did what you do. I bitch slapped him." And then he described it like that. So Don Murphy sues Tarantino for libel or slander or whatever you sue them for saying something on a TV show. And I think there was some sort of out of court settlement or something. I mean, this is all back of my mind. I don't even know if you could find this info on the internet.
I remember
back in the night.
I remember Don Murphy said in an interview that he would openly celebrate the death of Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, I'm sure he hates him because he's like a real man child too. So, if you could imagine these two geeks getting into a fight, think of the worst science fiction convention you've ever bothered to attend, and two of the nerdiest attendees out of their mom's basement getting into a fight. That's probably what it was like. It was dreadful. This is
Roger Avery wasn't there.
And this is not Howard Hawks and Raoul Walsh getting to a fight. I'll put it that way.
Okay, speaking of Howard Hawks, I'm listening to Tarantino going, okay, people say John Ford's the best director of American Westerns, and I don't agree with that, but people say he's the best. Well, who's number two? Everyone fights over number two, and I was going, Howard Hawks, Howard Hawks, Howard Hawks, Howard Hawks, Howard Hawks. And he's going, Delmer Davies. He's just like throwing out these names. Ugh. Howard Hawks. I'm going, what? Why is his name not mentioned? Like
really? You didn't mention Howard Hawks at all?
No.
I think weird.
And I was going, I mean, if you're going to talk about the best director of Westerns, like it's a battle between Ford and Hawks,
Yeah, pretty much.
It was to have that cool soundbite where like, you can't have that argument here. But
when he's like with Corbucci, everyone agrees he's number two,
Which arguably, I mean, while that for me would be the case, and for a lot of people, I think there's an argument to be made that Salima.
Sergio Salima, yes. Yeah. For sure.
There's an argument to be made. So it's kind of a false premise to begin with. I remember, maybe not so much anymore, post Django Unchained and certainly post this new movie. But I remember a time, at least in fandom, that Salima was considered better.
Yeah, I can see that too, because his, but when we're talking about Salima, we're talking about Stefan Salima, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, naturally. Diego Soldado, yeah.
Diego Soldado,
Yeah.
All cops are bastards too.
Did Del Toro kill that kid at the end, or did he teach him to be just like him? I think he killed him. Okay.
He killed him.
He totally. He at least cut his arm off or something.
He killed him. Oh, he's gonna teach him to be like him. Like, no, he fucking killed him, dude. Come on, he shot him in the goddamn face.
Oh man.
That movie was an eye-opener in the theater. Holy crap, when the Muslims were blowing up the fucking supermarket. I was just like, wow!
I was like, wait a minute, am I really seeing this? I was like, shit.
And I was just like, how is this Hollywood made? And then I realized, it's Canadian money or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canadian money, Italian director. It's a different world.
Isn't Salima doing something else right now? Stefano, I saw his name attached to something.
He's doing a remake of The Big Gun Down.
I saw.
I just wanted to see your face. It fell flat.
That's not true. Stefano Salima.
I thought he should have done the last Bond movie instead of the TV guy.
Oh yeah.
I thought he would have been a good choice for that.
I mean, they honestly should stay away from A-listers. Period. But yeah.
Dang, he's 55 years old. I didn't know he was so dang old.
Yeah, there's a youthfulness to his movies.
Oh, he did. Never mind. I saw he did the Without Remorse that Taylor Sheridan wrote based on Tom Clancy.
Oh, the Amazon Prime movie.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
saw a trailer for that, and I saw Stefano
with,
Salima, and I went, "Oh, hey,
with Killmonger. What's his name?
yeah, Michael B. Jordan."
That one.
It's also got Guy Pearce. It's got,
Yeah, because he plays the main character in Rainbow Six, right? I had this discussion with John a few months ago. He plays John Clark, I think is the character's name.
He was in Rainbow Six for the Nintendo 64 specifically.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Oh my God. They put that out. I love that game. They put that out on the Nintendo Classic or whatever the fuck it's called on the Switch, and they just they superimpose Michael B. Jordan in it. They re-released the game, but it's Michael B. Jordan as John Clark.
Does he have a head that's slightly oversized for the figure? Like
exactly,
for the
yeah.
action?
Yeah, where it looks like it's like
it's just one expression of Michael B. Jordan, his only expression.
Someone should show this movie to Gary Johnson because part of it takes place in Aleppo.
Really?
Yeah. What's Aleppo?
The Rainbow Six movie?
Without Remorse.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we review this on a future show or something?
We should.
I should have said what's Aleppo. Oh well.
And then we could do. I think it kicked off the Taylor Sheridan backlash because there's a bit of a backlash on him in the last year or so because of that and the Angelina Jolie movie. Like both of them disappointed people.
Yeah.
So,
well,
he's not the great hope that we thought he was.
I watched the Jolie movie and then I stopped watching it like 40 minutes in, and then I forgot about it. And then I watched it, the rest of it, on a plane months after the fact, on a flight back home, back to LA from Miami for Christmas. And yeah, it was not. It had it come out in 1999, nobody would have remembered it.
Yeah.
Have you seen 1883 yet? His new Yellowstone prequel Western thing.
I didn't realize that was Taylor Sheridan. No, I'm working on it at work. As in, the equipment comes back to us, and I put it back inside, put it back on the system.
It's shooting here, and some of it's shooting here in Dallas.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's his face has had such a career renaissance lately. You know who I'm talking about?
Tim McGraw.
Elliot. Nope. Yeah, he might as well be called Elliot. Yeah, both these are apt. Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Sam Elliott comes off of playing Lady Gaga's dad or something in that movie. I didn't see it.
House of
Stars
Gucci.
Born.
Or
House of Gucci. That's right. Could you imagine him doing an Italian accent?
No.
Well, Lady Gaga couldn't do one either. So
she's so like, hey, I'm Italian.
It sounded Russian or something. It was weird. It sounded
like that's a movie that's gotten an audience with the people who love campy, like people who like Mommy Dearest.
It's the same audience that W had 15 years ago. If W actually had an audience.
I was gonna say, I don't think anybody liked that movie. That was like a TV.
Nobody, never mind, liked it. Nobody saw it.
Like I saw it, and it's like a TV movie.
I did too.
Like I was going. This is Oliver Stone, the guy who used to edit movies on every drug imaginable, like mescaline and cocaine, and now his films. It's like all of his films were like TV movies. After that, after Alexander was his last big trip.
It's like keeps re-editing the damn thing, and you get a new version of it every couple of years.
It's true about W looking like an HBO movie or something. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And Snowden, just we were talking about Natural Born Killers. That's a movie that's a sensory overload.
Terrible. What a piece of shit.
Yeah, because he shoots them on the cheap in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Like Louisiana stands in for everything. Like I think W was completely filmed in Baton Rouge, or no. What's it? Shreveport. They film everything in Shreveport now, or they were.
And I think with that movie Savages, he was trying to get back to the old Oliver Stone. I don't know, but I haven't seen it.
That thing was
awful too.
Plus, it's based on a book by that cuck on Twitter who's always
Don Wilson. What's his name? Not Don Wilson. What's his name? Don Winslow.
Yeah.
Don Winslow, who is now on.
Twitter. Zolly put it best. Oh, he's awful. Like Zolly put it best. He said this is a guy who watches MSNBC every morning while on his rowing machine and gets real pissed off. And that's how he tweets. So, I see his stuff at Dollar Tree all the time, but I don't want to read it.
Well, it was described recently by Gavin McInnes, of all people, as, and I don't even really believe this because I don't think men read, but Gavin McInnes described his novels as movies that divorced men read. I don't think it's a funny quote, but I don't think men read, much less divorced men.
Oh, no. Divorced men are sitting on their phone swiping on Tinder or something. You know?
Oh yeah, watching porn,
getting all excited.
Yeah, they're not sitting through a Don whatever tome. It's not happening. Where the bad guys are these white nationalists or something.
Yeah, they're trying to bring the Fourth Reich.
It's like the Sum of All Fears, the movie version.
Yeah,
where it's
he does like a novelization of that basically. Yeah, everything's been a novelization.
Your son's about to creep on you.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought it was Michael Myers for a second. I was like, John, look
out! But yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind watching the Michael B. Jordan Rainbow Six movie.
No, we should do it.
Yeah. You know, we need material. There's not much coming out that we could cover.
God, there isn't. No. It's all gone.
And that's easy to watch. It's on Prime.
Yeah.
It's also easy to turn on if it sucks.
Right. Or you can watch it like I did with the latest John Woo. Watch like 10 minutes at a time. Like it'll take you about 2 months to finish it.
Get through the action sequences.
Yeah.
We should talk about Rainbow Six, the video game on the N64.
Yeah, we should.
Oh, good.
Well, is there anything else we want to cover with Django and Django?
Yeah, you guys want to go? I mean, there's got to be a few more things. Surprisingly, not a lot of Corbucci stuff. There is yet to be a good book on Corbucci, at least in America. Quentin finally admitted after 12 years, because I knew about this back in 2010, that he was writing one. And I guess he got too high and didn't finish or something.
I think Quentin gets high and says what he wants to do as though he's doing it. And then it just doesn't happen.
Well, this was, I mean, I don't know how much Mike Malloy wants me to divulge, but this was back in 2010. We were in town for 2 weeks because we had all of our interviews at that point, I think, that we ended up getting. And only because Malloy was badgered constantly about getting Quentin Tarantino, he decided well, let me try. And he helped him out. And all of this actually came back to me while watching this documentary, because he talked about The Specialist a lot. He even has his little fanboy version of events that should have been in a book instead of the book we got. But where what's his face, Rick Dalton, comes back to Corbucci after making 3 other movies in Italy. And he says, hey, I hear you're doing The Specialist. Come on, get me in The Specialist. I want to be in this movie. Because he realizes that after making fun of Corbucci, that Corbucci's a mensch or whatever, when dealing with all the other directors that he dealt with, one of them being Antonio Margheriti. And Corbucci thinks about it, likes his performance in Nebraska Jim, the first movie that they made with each other a few months back. And he ultimately decides not to have Rick, because Rick was too much of a prima donna on set. In reality, it was a French co-production and the French weren't allowing that to happen, but whatever. What was The Specialist? So there was all this stuff on The Specialist, and it all came flooding back, and I'm like, you know what? I wonder if the origin of Once Upon a Time, and here's me trying to insinuate myself and Mike into something, so it goes both ways. I wonder if the origin of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is at least a little percentile connected to Malloy and the documentary and myself. Because back in 2010, as I said, we were in town for 2 weeks. We were promised an interview by Quentin. We were talking with his assistant, Jules, who was active with us for a little while until we landed. And then all of a sudden it was radio silence for 2 weeks. And yet she was active on Facebook. She went to go see Toy Story 3 with her mother for like the 4th time or something like that. She literally said this. And the way we got into their good graces was because at the time Quentin was looking for the specialist. He had never seen the movie. At least I don't think so. And he was working on the Corbucci book. That never happened, at least not as of yet. And Malloy ended up getting him a copy of the English version, which was the cut English version that goes by the alternate title, Hands Up, Dead Man, or I'll Shoot, or something to that effect. There's also a Peter Lee Lawrence movie that has that title, so it's very similar, so I'm confused in my brain. It's confusing right now. And then I also got Mike a good, pristine, Italian-only copy, pristine at the time. If I looked at it now, it probably looks like ass. And we sent it to him. And so I don't know, like he mentioned the book that he was writing. He mentioned Specialist a bunch of times. And I don't know, it just feels like, I wonder if all this was when he watched it for presumably the first time, the copies that we sent. I wonder if he had formulated it in his brain. You know, he started formulating Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or something.
Well, I do know that John Carpenter was referencing Mike Malloy.
Yes, that's a fact.
Escape from LA. We know this for
a fact. Well, I'm not talking about reference. I'm just saying it was all kind of in the soup.
Right. It was just another element that entered the
right. Like I just feel like,
that is Quentin's brain, you know.
Right, because the timeline more or less makes sense. He obviously dropped doing the Corbucci book at some point. His theory on, has anybody seen Sonny and Jed?
No, I've never seen it.
No, it'll fall flat with you guys. But yeah, the movie Tomas, it's kind of Bonnie and Clyde, not really, but it's close to. There's two westerns that I can think of that jump on the Bonnie and Clyde bandwagon. It's that one and the Thomasine and Bushrod, the blaxploitation one with Bonita.
That's a good movie. I've seen that.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. That is a little close. That's much closer to Bonnie and Clyde because of a certain ending that Sonny and Jed does not exactly have. But in the movie Tomas, you wonder about Susan George's character who plays Sonny, because she just seems like a ditzy idiot for wanting to be with this guy, because he is verbally and at times physically abusive to her. He's complete trash to her. So it's tough to get into the movie that way. I think it has other merits. I've always liked it. But he has a completely different take to it, where the villain of the movie, Franciscus, played by Telly Savalas, is this lawman chasing Sonny and Jed down. And he is the villain of the piece. However, Quentin has a very good theory, and that Franciscus, it's actually an inverse perspective, or whatever it is that he said, where Franciscus is actually the hero of the film. And because he goes through the maiming and stuff, and a lot of Corbucci's main characters go through maiming. Django gets his hands broken. Silence, and the Great Silence, already enters the picture completely maimed. He can't speak, but then at the end he gets maimed some more. There's quite a few examples of that. Minnesota Clay, I mentioned earlier, gets blinded. So it kind of makes sense in that way, because you don't really like Jed, who's Tomas Milian. However, if you really think about it, I'm sure Corbucci was not putting that much thought into it. And you know who else is maimed in a lot of Corbucci movies? Not just heroes, but also villains. Look at Jack Palance's hand in Compañeros.
Jack Palance smokes a lot of weed in that movie.
He smokes a lot of weed. There's Mario Adorf in The Specialist is missing an arm. Like there's a lot of maimed characters in Corbucci movies, and they're not all protagonists. So I think it's just a coincidence. I think it's just another character who gets maimed, because Franciscus does get blinded halfway through the movie. Good theory. Much better than his Django one. So
yeah, the Django theories. The Django theory, like that made me go from thinking the movie was just like a special feature to not liking, because I was like, it's such a dumb theory.
They should have cut that whole thing.
They taped it out at the end. Like you could possibly miss it. You could just shut it off because it comes at a post-credit sequence.
Yeah,
right?
It does. I almost turned it off. I almost missed it completely.
Yeah.
But Eric, you brought up Tomas Milian. You and Tomas were close. Did he have anything to share when he was alive about Corbucci or his time with him, working with him?
I was so close to Tomas, I saw Savages with him. It was terrible.
Oh man, that's like saying you were at Normandy together. You know, it's like
I have
a bonding
flashbacks.
experience.
Yeah. I have PTSD episodes. Tomas had nothing but nice things to say about Corbucci. He and Nori, his wife, who gets some time on the dock. And we were dealing with Nori quite a lot on Django Lives. Before she died. She died fairly recently. Mm-hmm. In fact, the doc is dedicated to her, it seems like. He would go out to dinner with them. He felt that Corbucci never, outside of having a good time with him, he felt that Corbucci never really had a real relationship with him. It was all just like, because Tomas could be clownish, even in his personal life. To some extent, I saw that, but mostly I saw, somebody who had lost a wife, and he was just not the same person. He felt that Corbucci mostly had him around to laugh at, like a clown. Funny, like a clown. I don't know how true that is. Tomas has very skewed perspectives on pretty much everything, had skewed perspectives. So I don't know what the truth is, but that's what he told me, that he liked Corbucci, he liked Nori a lot. He liked going out with them and drinking and going to the nice restaurants, and but that he never felt that he really had a relationship with him. He just felt that he was there for Corbucci's amusement. They worked together 3 times.
Yeah, since they did a few films together.
He matched Franco Nero on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what I remember. I'm not sure why they stopped working with each other. Except this is just my own theory. Tomas was just in a different planet in the 70s. Corbucci went off and made the Terence Hill Bud Spencer. So actually, Corbucci ended up making movies with bona fide stars too. Tomas was a bona fide star in Italy and presumably other parts of the international market. But he was at the top of his game in the 70s. Even if the movies don't mean a lick to us, all those Nico Giraldi movies, there's only so much Americans can stomach. But those movies, he was getting paid the most in his career ever at that time. He was getting, and back then, those guys were getting paid cash. They did not have to do taxes on it. And he was just, look at his filmography in the 70s, nonstop. Never mind the 13 Nico Giraldi movies that bled into the 80s. All this other shit that nobody even knows about. We talked about it fairly recently. Son of the Sheik. I forgot I saw that. He did a bunch of serious Euro crime movies. He was all over the map. He did a few Westerns. I think he did For the Apocalypse. He was still doing Westerns. He did Sonny and Jed.
He was in, but he did like Faccia, Face to Face. He did
Face to Face is late 60s.
Oh, late. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. I think it's 68 or something. But it was a boon time for him in the 70s, more so than in the 60s. And to some extent, certainly more so in the 80s, because the 80s, everything tapered off and he moved to Los Angeles by 84. And, at that point, he's playing in the real big leagues. So he wasn't getting that much work. I saw him in a movie recently. I had no idea he was in it. I watched it's Nails. It's called, with Dennis Hopper. It's a cop movie. I think it was an HBO movie or a Showtime film.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
in the 90s.
It was Showtime. I remember.
It's free on YouTube, and I'm watching the movie because I was watching that documentary, LA Plays Itself.
Oh yeah, it's a famous one.
It's a good one. It gets a little political at the end. And
so LA Plays Itself. It's just clips from the Warriors, like Escape from New York,
correct.
Mad Max.
The movie's not set in New York. The movie's set in New York, not shot in New York. Somebody did an addendum to that. Vancouver doesn't play itself or something like that.
Vancouver doesn't play itself.
But I was watching that, and the critic covered Nails, this movie I'd never heard of, and I'm like, I'll watch that. It's on YouTube for free. It's like little seen film because it didn't, outside of it playing on TV, it's hard to get a DVD copy. It's on YouTube if you want to see it. It's not great, but boy, was I blown away. 30 minutes in or so, Tomas shows up looking like Tomas does in the early 90s, which is unrecognizable. And I'm like, is that Tomas? And then he starts talking, and I'm like, I think that's Tomas. And then I looked it up, and I was just like, it's Tomas. He plays his partner the rest of the movie. It's not like a quick scene or nothing like that. He's there throughout for the long haul. So it was an interesting watch, because I'm not used to Tomas looking the way that he does in the early 90s. He looks like a completely different person. And the reason for that is because in the 70s and bleeding into the early 80s, he played Nico Giraldi about 2 million times, and he never took the makeup off. He had the stupid wig on the whole time. He's covered in rags. So when all that shit came off, he looked like a fat old man.
I remember the last thing I saw him in was that Andy Garcia film, The Lost City.
Oh, God. Yeah, but by then, that's the Tomas that I knew, not at that time. That's 2007.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm just saying that's like
Tomas.
Yeah, that was
since he left Italy.
More your era.
Yeah.
If only we got Neighborhood Watch Giraldi, that would have been quite something.
What could have been? It would have been funny. But at least maybe, I don't know. If we had an actual budget, it would have been good. But unless you Sean Baker with an iPhone or something. But
yeah,
it would have been like Man on the Street type stuff. But
like the last Seagal movie I attempted.
Oh God, I can't even imagine. I tell you what, Seagal, for being, what is he, a D-list actor at this point? Something like that, I would say. He is he's a highly paid D-list actor to the point where he's getting paid more money than probably some low-tier A-listers. How do I know that? Because he's making $1 million a movie.
Jeez. Unbelievable.
Danny McBride, probably high B's, I would say, right? Danny McBride ain't making $1 million a movie.
No, he's not a draw at all.
Yeah, so
that's shocking.
Seagal's an interesting case, and if you were to have an actual conversation with the guy, like a real interview, it would probably be fascinating. But you're gonna get the fake whatever nonsense Seagal flavor of the week you're gonna get. You're not gonna get a real thing from him. He probably doesn't even do interviews. So, but yeah, what a fascinating career to have at this late stage, being a fat fuck who makes action.
He did an interview with Scott Adkins' podcast, and he just lied through his teeth about everything.
I'm sure he did. Yeah. He's the real once upon a time, and I guess he still is. Once a champ, always a champ. I mean, he's the real deal. He can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. But he's lazy, and he's lazier than Bruce Willis is, because at least Bruce gets on a treadmill, at least it looks like.
Yeah.
Seagal is doing all these terrible action movies in Bulgaria and not doing any action.
No, it's the most obvious stuntman of all time, doing all the
He's got his painted
punches.
Hair and stuff.
Yeah, they always bring in the
Seagal
stuntman with the wig, with the weird. He has a chopped mullet in a lot of movies now. Doesn't always have the ponytail, and it's a strange look. But
he's got Gene Simmons hair.
It helps the stand-in, I think.
Yeah. Is he in Russia because of tax purposes? Which, God bless him, if that's the case.
I have heard he left. I've heard through people who know him that he's actually in Russia because he does not want to pay taxes in America right now.
Whenever I hear of an expatriate is in Russia, I'm like, taxes.
Yeah. And Putin offered him a citizenship, and apparently he's living in some beautiful part of Russia, away from the press and away from everybody, and loves it. Has no reason to come back.
Wasn't he accused of sex trafficking? Maybe there's that too.
That always happens, but he got out of all that. I think he paid settlements and got out of it pretty much.
Oh God, so he did do that?
Yeah. Well, what happened is I think he's one of those guys who has a harem of women. Oh, and it was one of those cases. It was like some of the Cosby accusations. I'm not saying Cosby was innocent, but it was one of those cases where, he harassed me, and then I went back the next day, and then I went back the next day. When I actually read the complaint, it was really weird. Now, I've heard stories about him that, he's not somebody you really want on a movie set with a lot of young women. So
yeah. I've heard nothing but nightmare stories.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of truth to it. He's a sleazebag,
Yeah. No.
But still a fascinating actor. And it's not like these other guys don't do that too. I mean, let's not act like everybody's a Boy Scout.
Everybody's a sleazebag.
Yeah.
It's facilitated pretty much.
So is there anything else on Django and Django we want to get to?
More Corbucci stuff. I want either a doc or a book. A coffee table book would be fine. Somebody would have to do exhaustive research on the whole thing. And I understand why that's a major undertaking, because unlike Leone, if you just covered Corbucci's Westerns, that's still 13, 14 goddamn movies you got to go through.
Yeah.
Have interviews and articles and things. Guess what? That window's closing real fast.
I was going to say, none of these people are getting any younger. So
no, I've come to realize that now. I mean, I always knew it, but like it at some point you hit a wall and you don't know you're going to hit it until you actually do. And I'm past that at this point. I interviewed Gary Conway on The Farmer, and I had all of a sudden the stuff he was talking about, I'm like, fuck, it turns out I like Rolling Thunder, or I like No Mercy Man. I like all these Vietnam War veterans come back home movie. Why don't I just do a doc on the fucking thing?
Yeah.
Not that there'd be an audience for it, unfortunately, because that's just not something that people give two shits about. But and then I started looking people up. Oh, he's dead. He died last year. Oh, he's dead. He died 2 weeks ago in some cases. Oh, he's dead. He died in 2017. I was just like, holy shit, that's it. The gravy train here is done.
Yeah.
In terms of actors, and it's happening with spaghetti Western actors too. It's over.
I mean,
those
Clint's
guys that
in
were
his 90s, and he's the face on Mount Rushmore,
Exactly. No, but the guys that were action stars in the 60s and 70s, they're dead or dying. It's done.
Like
so
Bert's dead, Tomas is dead.
Bert's dead, Tomas is dead. And even if you were to get them now, most of them have dementia or whatever, and they're just old and they just don't remember shit anymore.
We saw some interview with some Italian director, and his brain was just mush. I can't remember who it was.
Was it Parolini?
Yeah, it was Parolini. Yeah. Yes.
Talking about celery juice and
it was just, I was watching that interview going, oh, this guy's totally gone.
Yeah,
he was gone when I interviewed him. I want to say in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
He was already gone. Like mind you, my Italian was not good. It still isn't. And his English was not very good.
Yeah, you just got to do that and go, hey,
hey, parlano italiano,
I liked Ruggiero's story though about Bert picking up the phone.
Oh, that is very funny. That's a very petty Bert story. I believe it 100%.
That's why it's true. It's petty.
Yeah.
Because that's all he is petty grudges. Bert's whole personal life was nothing but petty grudges.
That is a great story I never heard. I'm glad. Yeah. See, there were little nuggets in the doc that I was just like, oh, never heard of that.
Yeah, the Ruggero Deodato's Burt Reynolds story is excellent in this documentary.
It's good. It's a good one. It's a good one. So good, don't spoil it. Watch the movie.
Yeah, watch the movie.
Yeah. It's a petty story. It's true. It's true. To hold that venom for how many years?
15 years.
Yeah. The fact that he remembered his name and everything.
Yeah.
It's so scary.
They always put down Navajo Joe as the movie that was released to prison flights and stuff. He was always dismissing it.
And flights because you couldn't leave, which I knew as soon as the Rick Dalton fantasy about how Rick had seen one spaghetti Western and it was Navajo Joe. And it's like, I saw it on a plane. And I'm like, oh, is it Navajo Joe, Quentin? Oh yeah, it's Navajo Joe. Okay. That old story. Yeah, Burt. I've never seen the footage myself, and I've seen a lot of Burt Reynolds' Tonight Show appearances. I've not run across it yet. I wonder if that's all legend that he just told people in other interviews, and he never mentioned it on Tomorrow. on I was going to say the Tomorrow Show with Tom. With,
all the 60s Carson shows are mostly lost.
Is that why? I'm seeing all the 70s ones. Okay.
They all got wiped, I think. And that would have been 68, 67, whenever that got released over here.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably played America in 67. It was a 66 film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Corbucci had a very prolific year that year. Or Johnny Oro, Navajo Joe, Django.
Yeah.
So,
a good percentage of those are gone. Like when the show was done in New York. And supposedly most of those episodes are gone. Just a few were preserved on 16 millimeter. And that's about it, I think. And some of those made some public domain collections. I've never seen them. I've heard it's classic. Rat Pack gets drunk on the show, and it was going on for 90 minutes and that sort of thing. So that episode's probably lost. But yeah, all the 70s ones that were running on Pluto TV and everything, those were all saved because it was shot in Burbank.
Just so people at home know, it's Bert would say that he'd get on Johnny and trash Navajo Joe. It says you can only see it on planes and prisons because they won't let you out and stuff.
Yeah.
Navajo Joe. Well, what do you think about Navajo Joe? I'll give my opinion.
John?
I like it. I think it's a good solid action movie. It moves. It's a lot of spaghetti westerns. I think are very slow, and sometimes they use a length as padding. This doesn't have it. It just moves. It just rocks. It's like if your complaint about spaghetti westerns is they're too slow moving, this one is the one you have to watch because it's just like a fast action movie. It's like what you see in the Rambo First Blood sequels. It's like that one character just taking everybody out, and aggressive action hero. An actual very aggressive one.
It's not like the Leone films where the action's like boom boom boom. It's a action flick where Bert's like getting up in your grill and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, he does an amazing performance. Like considering he's doing pretty much, it looks like all of his stunt work. I'd have to watch it again to be sure, but
yeah, I was wanting to watch it again after I saw this documentary. I was going, man, I need to put Navajo Joe back in the rotation.
Yeah, good Morricone score. Aldo Sobrell's terrific villain in it. Yeah,
if you're watching it, it's correct aspect ratio. It is Corbucci's best looking movie.
Yeah,
he's got the vistas of Almeria and stuff. It's a good movie.
I think it's better than Great Silence. I think it's way better.
Oh yeah, for sure. Great Silence.
You didn't give your opinion on Great Silence, John.
Yeah, I know. I had heard it was fantastic. I had seen.
Actually, you did.
Yeah, oops. No. Did I? I can't even remember if I did.
Do it again, though. It's okay.
No, it's like I had heard that Great Silence is this terrific film. I had seen Django. I had seen Super Fuzz. Those are the only Corbucci movies I'd seen.
Super Fuzz is his best movie.
Yeah, it is. I think it's odds and evens, actually. I got a copy of Great Silence from a Japanese videotape or laserdisc that was in English. Watched it, and I was like, "Is this it?" It just didn't do much for me. And then as the years go by, I thought young generations would kind of reject this movie, but everybody embraces it like that, like a bad heavy metal record.
They love it because they're young and they're cynical and they're like, "Oh yeah,"
Yeah.
And I think when you get older, you're like, "It's for kids."
Yeah, and I was already too old for it by the time I saw it. Yeah,
I saw it when
I saw it in my early 20s. I was like, "Oh, this is cool," and now I'm like, "This movie's it's fine," but
I think everybody goes into it already knowing the ending, which is a big detriment. I think it would. I walked into it as well knowing the ending. Unfortunately, I wonder what the experience would have been like had I not known, especially after watching Django, where this guy is completely devastated and he somehow makes it out on top. Too, I would be watching thinking, "Oh yeah, well, Tarantino's going to pull it out of that, out of his ass on this one." But then having him actually die, I probably wouldn't be able to believe it. But I never had that luxury. And I think, unfortunately, most people going into it don't have that luxury because everybody always has to talk about the bummer ending. That said, it's kind of a flat line of a film.
Yeah.
It only exists for that ending, really.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it has no merit. It does. It looks good. And I like snow Westerns and I think there's other interesting aspects about it, but overall, it's all about that ending. And I'm sorry, but it's just not good enough. Corbucci made much better films.
Yeah,
much better films than The Great Silence.
And Jack Palance's pot smoking general is a better villain in Compañeros.
It's true. Yeah. But anything else? We talked, the footage is great. The footage from What Am I Doing in the Middle of a Revolution, which I recommend. It's a silly comedy, but it has, at that point, I think, if we're to believe the movie's narrative, Corbucci, and it makes sense because that was the tail end of his Western career. He went on to do comedies. Corbucci was a little sick of leftist politics because the movie is kind of about the fog of war. And it's about how confusing revolution can be. It's almost like his answer to Jula to Duck You Sucker, in a way, which is Leone's sort of apolitical Zapata Western.
Right.
It's almost apolitical, and it doesn't take sides. Like, it's just both sides are ridiculous in the perspective of the two characters. It's an interesting movie. I recommend it. It's probably not too easy to come across. That's a movie that probably won't get a Kino release just because there's no recognizable stars to Americans to really attach, to get attached to. But I don't know. Stranger things have shown up on Kino Lorber, so what do I know?
Maybe we could show up on Amazon Prime, like everything used to, or Tubi. Everything shows up on Tubi.
I feel like those days are done. Amazon Prime's hankering to become the next Netflix with all original programming. Pretty soon, you're not going to get the Wild West that was Amazon Prime as little as a year ago.
You can't even watch any of the old independent kung fu flicks anymore. Those are all gone. You look at martial arts, you get the American Ninja movies and Enter the Ninja with Franco. That's it.
Oh,
crap.
That movie.
Well, do we want to go ahead and rate this documentary?
I mean, sure. It's a DVD supplement. I give it I give it a 5.
Yeah, that's what I'd give it. Yeah. It has its moments.
It has its moments. I was gonna give it a 6 just based on that. You reminded me of the Burt Reynolds story. That's a funny one. But
John,
no.
what about you?
I give it a 5, and I kind of didn't care for the way it just kind of wrote off most of his comedies he made later in his career, like Hill and Spencer stuff, which probably made more money than any of his westerns.
Yeah, the super,
more likely,
and they mention that, but give me Super Fuzz, any day.
Super Fuzz is his most popular film in this country. I hate to break it to you spaghetti western fans out there, but that's the most well-known film.
And it's a great comic book movie.
It's
a
terrific
movie.
Great fun. Got Ernest Borgnine dropping his jaw every 5 minutes of what Terrence Hill's hero abilities.
Shot in Miami. So
can't be it's Miami of 1979, 78.
Well, yeah. Anything you want to add before we go, Eric? Anything you need to plug?
No, nothing. I'd rather have instead of this doc, I'd rather have a book on the matter and just like to go point by point on all the films, as opposed to, so many things got bypassed, as you said.
Yeah.
Including a lot of Westerns, actually.
Yeah. It's not comprehensive at all. It's very lightweight.
No.
It's like it was made for a box set of his political Westerns.
Yeah.
It's like a
That's all it was.
Yeah.
That's all it was. Boy, oh boy, and Quentin. First of all, that story he tells with about meeting Hitler is patently false.
Oh, that's complete. A lot of the stuff about his boyhood sounded made up to me. Like, his dad would come home and take his fascist uniform off and throw it in the corner.
Yeah, those fascist uniforms. Didn't Lemmy have a collection of those?
Oh yeah, I was just like, okay, sure, pal. Whatever.
It ended up in Lemmy's Connect collection. That's a lie. That's a story. And then, boy, fascism was not too far off the lips of Quentin. I thought once he got done with the fascist thing about his dad throwing the thing and meeting Hitler, I thought, okay, we're done with that. Nope, he had to bring up fascism like 3 other times.
Fascism, the American South, everything, all of the sort of obsessions you get from watching too many movies,
Yeah, the most illuminating clip I thought was Sergio Corbucci saying he loved Mandrake comic books. So,
Man.
that totally backs up what we talk about on the show anytime we discuss Italian westerns.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm surprised Quentin didn't bring up the speech that Joe and Navajo Joe gives to the Americans, to the white people.
I forgot
about how, how far back do your parents go? And they're like, well, we came from Scotland. And, oh, well, my father, before my father, blah, 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 blah. We've been here. We're more American than you. That speech. It's a good speech. It's a little false, but it's a good speech. But I'm surprised Quentin didn't even mention that.
Yeah.
Since he wanted to go down that whole route.
He couldn't work the word fascism in there.
Yeah.
I guess not. God, just...
He thinks it makes him sound smart. That's what it is. It's pseudo-intellectual.
I've seen him in interviews. One persistent interviewer was not letting him off the hook, was asking him about Obama. Quentin couldn't come up with one example as to why he liked Obama. All it was like, boom, 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 boom. He just got it done. He got it done. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, but Quentin, what specific policy do you like? Boom, 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 boom. It was just like, dude, you are out of your depth. Just don't answer these questions. Don't talk about politics. Don't march with BLM. Don't do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Get out of it. Stick to movies.
He's not sophisticated in that regard. Yeah. Well, guys, I think that's going to about do it. Anything you need to plug, Eric?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. John, what about you?
Sorry, I picked
nothing to plug yet.
What?
Nothing to plug yet.
What'd you say, Eric?
I said, sorry, I picked a loser.
Oh, no, it's fine. It was a good discussion.
It's always fun when we bash things.
Yeah.
People love these episodes.
Yeah.
Really, they don't want to hear us praise anything.
No.
There's less to talk about.
Yeah.
Strange, sadly.
Well, guys, with that, I'm going to go ahead and say adios.
Yeah, peace out.